Here she is, the amazing Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. Elise, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Sid. Great to be with you this morning.
It is so great to be with you. And I have to tell you that the week in Milwaukee, one of my highlights was Tuesday night now, second night. I'm on the floor, and I see this beautiful little boy, just beautiful. His name's Sammy, and his father, and they're cheering. And I look up on the stage, and who's speaking to a raucous convention crowd, including me? Your speech was great. Your little boy was one of the highlights of the week. Congrats.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, he is a beautiful little boy. He's so smart, and boy, was that an adventure of the lifetime for him in Milwaukee. He had a great time. He's still talking about those balloons dropping. And do you know, Sid, he sat through President Trump's speech. Sam is 2 years old. He paid attention and waited for those balloons and had such a great time.
He was waving the American flags and dancing, and he was amazing. And, you talk about President Trump's speech. You don't know this, but Thursday night, the night of his speech, you arrived late. So your seat was open. So I really wanted to see like Dana White and Hulk Hogan. I wanted to see Hulk, and Ed Cox actually saved your seat for me. So you don't know this, but you actually helped me see a lot of that event on Thursday night till you got there. So thank you.
Oh, good. Well, I was glad to be there for all of President Trump's speech and some of the lead up. Didn't Dana White do a great job introducing President Trump? Just tremendous. And what an amazing convention. That's the best convention in modern political history, how unified Republicans are, and the stakes could not be higher this election cycle. So the support for President Trump is pouring out of all corners of this country, and I think he feels that love very deeply.
I think he does, too, and again, he'll be joining me in about 20 minutes. Elise, I want to talk about the cut I played Northwestern. I mentioned Harvard, Penn, MIT, and I had no idea how good you were going to be, I'll be honest, and it's the best grilling of anybody on the Hill I've ever seen, ever, and you got a couple of those ladies fired. Now, they're still getting paid, which annoys me, but you did what you had to do and did a terrific job, and you fight for anti-Semitism to stop it every day here in this country and around the world. How disheartening was it for you, Elise, to hear these presidents basically say, yeah, I don't know if it does exist, doesn't exist, I really don't care?
It was incredibly disheartening, and it's inexcusable. I graduated from Harvard, Sid. I was the first member of my immediate family to have the opportunity to attend college, and it was a real honor to be accepted after, a childhood and high school years of hard work to attend Harvard. It was not like that when I was there. There was a very vibrant Jewish community. Hillel was very active on campus. I enjoyed meals at Hillel. And yet to see 2 decades of moral decay, not just at Harvard, but these other universities that are, quote unquote, called elite, and to have the presidents equivocate on a very straightforward question. And it's interesting you talk about that question at that hearing, Sid. That was the last question of the hearing. It was not my prepared question. And I thought, how can I ask this in the most direct way as a moral question, not a political question? And the question was simple. I wrote it down in pencil 2 minutes before. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate your university's code of conduct? And my expectation was every single one would say yes, and I was going to follow up what disciplinary action has been taken. And to my shock, and I was appalled, they all said it depends on the context. You put up 3 of my constituents, they know how to answer that question. A farmer, a manufacturer, a suburban mom, they wouldn't hesitate and would answer, yes, that violates the code of conduct at our university. And yet you have these college presidents just failing. And you know what? That was the last question. They stood up. They left as if nothing bad happened and their testimony was okay. And the world heard. In 1 week, 1 billion views. It's now multiple billions months later. The most viewed testimony in the history of the United States Congress because of their moral bankruptcy. And as you know, Penn's president was forced out within 48 hours. It took a month and a plagiarism scandal to force out Claudine Gay at Harvard. The MIT president is still hanging on. And then, of course, you've seen these pro-Hamas encampments explode at various colleges and universities. So we need to stay vigilant on this issue. And President Trump was the president who expanded Title VI protections for Jewish students on college campuses. That executive order is on the books today, yet Joe Biden and Kamala Harris refuse to enforce it. This is one of the many reasons why we need to return President Trump to the White House.
You know, you talk about staying vigilant, Elise, and my fear is, first of all, it was not the testimony of them. The reason why it did so well was because you're so courageous, and you did a tremendous job. That's why I'm giving you the credit. But you do know this. A couple of weeks, all these universities, these colleges, they're going to start up again. And I have no reason to not believe, whether it's here in New York at Columbia or NYU or other universities around the country, that these animals, and they are animals, whether they're paid or not, that these animals are not going to try to do the same thing, and maybe even in bigger numbers. Do you think my fear is valid or paranoia?
No, I'm very concerned about the start of the school years, and the problem among many is that in the case of Columbia, Northwestern, Harvard, and a number of schools, instead of enforcing their rules on the books, they negotiated with the pro-Hamas encampment. In the case of Harvard, for example, there was a student who, a pro-Hamas, who assaulted a Jewish student at the law school. Initially, the response from Harvard under public pressure, only when there was public pressure, they rescinded the diploma. Do you know last week they gave that person the diploma?
Yes.
They gave the pro-Hamas assaulter
Yep.
the diploma.
Yep.
So people are seeing this happen, and these schools are not enforcing what their rules are. These colleges aren't going to fix themselves, and that's why it's so important for Congress when it comes to our appropriations, the federal funds, blocking non-U.S. federal dollars that are flowing into these schools, deporting students who are not U.S. citizens on visas who are part of these pro-Hamas encampments. They need to be revoked and they need to be deported. It's going to take Congress to act, and we will get it done. And we need a Republican Senate and President Trump in the White House to make sure that we can get it signed into law.
This is the great Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, who, whatever it's worth, was my choice for VP. No disrespect to J.D. Vance, but I think Trump blew it. I told him that. So anyway, Elise, I want to take you back to the Congress floor yesterday. We're going to switch topics now from anti-Semitism across our college campuses to the lady it looks like will be the Democrats' choice for president. Here's what you had to say very accurately about her border policies yesterday.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to condemn Vice President Kamala Harris for her failed and dangerous policies as Joe Biden's border czar that caused the most catastrophic border crisis in modern history. No matter what congressional district you go to, the number one issue facing Americans is Kamala Harris's open border crisis. And by every metric, Kamala Harris has failed to secure our borders, instead advancing far-left Democrats' failed open border policies and the needs of illegal immigrants over the safety of Americans.
I mean, this lady is such a disaster. Israel, forget about it. She went to a glorified sorority party and boycotted Bibi. The next day, she pissed Bibi off. It took her 3 days to say something about these poor little Arab children blown to bits on Saturday night. So we know already Israel, she couldn't care less. Doesn't like the Jews. Her husband being Jewish. Bernie Sanders is Jewish, at least. Who cares? But with the border, this is a real issue. You pointed that out yesterday. How can she possibly explain that away?
She can't explain it away. She owns this and was the chief architect of Joe Biden's open border policy. She was designated by Joe Biden as the border czar. And it's unbelievable that the media is now trying to rewrite history, going so far as editing articles that came out 3 years ago, designating her as the border czar. She is the reason these policies are in place, that we have an illegal crisis all across America, not just in big cities, not just in the quote-unquote border states. Every state is a border state. She is the border czar. She owns the open border policies, and that's one of the reasons why, one of the many, that we need to elect President Trump to return to the most effective border security policies. But it's not just the open border, Sid. She owns the Inflation Expansion Act.
Yep.
She was the deciding vote as vice president. She decided that vote in the Senate, the tiebreaker. And all of these economic challenges that families, small businesses, farms are facing across this country, Kamala Harris was the deciding vote, creating this historic inflation crisis. On top of that, she turned her back on Israel. The fact that it took 4 days for her to issue a public statement condemning Hezbollah's Iranian-backed attack on these innocent Israeli children, it is unbelievable, and we need to come together, not allow the media to erase her record, hold her accountable for her failures. And I agree with President Trump. She is even more radical and far left than Joe Biden, and she's incompetent as well. She is a San Francisco, California, defund the police liberal. Her policies and statements show that, and it's our job to continue to make sure the American people know that, to cut through the bias of the media and get the facts out there.
Well, you are a hero, and your friend President Trump is, in fact, coming up next, and he's going to echo, I think, a lot of the same things, Elise, you just said, and you promised me on the floor in Milwaukee, when we get back, Sid, I'm going to do your show, and you kept your word, and I'm thrilled, because I'm a huge, huge fan. Thank you for the great work you do for this city, for this state, for this country. God bless you, Elise Stefanik. You are a great American.